Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, depending on when and where you're joining us from today. It is a good day, no matter where you're joining us from. Today is a good day. We are talking today about succession plans, succession planning, the success of the plan, and then what? So now that you've done that, what's next? What do you do? My name is Jimmy Lee. I will be your host today. You've got questions, we've got the answers. Type them into the Q&A and we'll ask Tracy, who is our guest, Tracy, your questions. Tracy joins us from Performance Place in South Jordan, Utah. Tracy, good to have you on this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
Yeah. And for us, it's morning, but for Andrew, it's afternoon. Andrew's joining us, and it's probably already after lunch for Andrew. So good afternoon, Andrew. Tracy, thanks for being here, man. I really appreciate it. I've seen your shop. It's amazing. It's definitely grown over the years. And I'd love to start by going back in the Wayback Machine to when Pops started the shop. When Dad started the shop, what, 1970 or
70,
so?
74.
74.
Yeah. So this year marks 50 years in business for us.
Well, yes, and that's easy math for me. I was born in 74, so yeah, 50 years.
Yeah.
That's a long time, dude. Okay. When Dad started the shop back in the day, what was it that you guys were working on? What was Pops working on?
Well, back in South Jordan, the early days in 74, I mean, there was a lot of farm equipment. He had opened a small, it was actually a six-bay shop to begin with, right on Redwood Road, the main drag through South Jordan. Um, but he started out pretty much working on anything from cars to trucks to tractors to whatever I think he could, to help get the business going. So
Yeah. And he built the building, right? You have like 3.5 acres there, or 5 acres, or 10 acres, or I mean, you got
yeah,
a lot of land.
yeah, we've got like almost 3 acres now. But when he started, he was on a half an acre. The building took up most of that. Um, it's funny, my grandma owned the land and basically helped my dad get started way back then. Um,
Wow.
helped him build the shop, and then through the years, as pieces of property around us became available, we purchased them over the years, piece by piece, and now we're right in downtown South Jordan, and the everything is literally just grown up around us. I mean, when we started out, there was a little 2-lane road up and down in front of the shop, and now it's a major metropolitan area now.
Well, yeah, aren't you like a 6-lane road out there in front of you?
Yeah, yeah. We In the beginning we had actually parking in front of the shop between that and Redwood Road, and now they've expanded Redwood Road where it's 6 lanes, and I mean our building's 10 feet off the road. They'd never let us do that today, but we were kind of there before everything else started.
Yeah, I was trying to remember. It felt like the sidewalk was right up against the building.
It is. The sidewalk is literally 3 feet from the building, but
Oh, that's so close.
yeah, and people are like, how did it be end up so close? And I said, well, the road used to be, you know, 30 or 40 feet out from where it is now. And it was just
Yeah.
2 lanes.
Yeah. So when Pop started, it was all ag, and didn't he have like 4 or 6 bays or something like that?
Yeah, he had the first initial part of the shop, which we're still operating out of, 6 bays. There was enough driveway around it for circle around, not much parking at all, and I'm thankful, as of today that, as stuff popped up around us for sale, he was able to purchase that. There's a lot of demand for the land where we're at. So, going forward, we're in a great spot. I mean, we've got loyal customers, and there's literally the community has grown around us. We actually, in the city of South Jordan, we're one of the two oldest still operating businesses that have been going on for this long.
Wow. Yeah, that's super cool. That's some longevity there. Pop's really set up a legacy for you guys. And he also built on the building a couple of times to
Yes.
where now aren't you like 14 or 20 different bays that you've got available?
Yeah. So we've got 14 workable bays right now. Um, there was an addition and an addition, and then just an addition on an addition. But yeah, we've got 14 workable bays right now. Um, and actually, we're in right now in the design stages of either adding on a new waiting room and possibly some more workable bays out of the shop. One of our big issues right now is our waiting room is still the same waiting room that we started back in the original shop. And so now we've got to come up with a plan to get some more service advisors in there to help support more technicians, because luckily we have the shop size to support more technicians, but we need to develop more workspace for the front office to support them.
Right, for sure, for sure. And I want to paint a picture here for everybody that's listening and watching this. The service advisors are in a hallway. This
Yes,
hallway has been converted into their office, which used to be the parts closet, right?
it was. Yeah, it is. As far as having a shop layout for service advisors, um, it's not ideal, but you think when he started, my dad was fixing the cars, greeting the people at the front counter. Back then they didn't even know what a service advisor was. In the beginning, I think there was one or two chairs in a little corner for somebody that was waiting. And, now the industry's grown into this where you have a support staff in the front office that supports the rear and back and forth.
Yeah.
And we've just had to adapt. And we finally just got to the point where we've outgrown physically what we can do in the front office.
Yeah, I love it. I love your shop. I love the opportunity. I love the expansion possibilities that are there for you guys. It's super awesome. Super awesome. So, question for you as you're going through life, here you step in and you start, shoot, man, you must have been like 2-year old pushing a broom. You must have learned
Yeah,
to walk in the shop. Like you grew up in the shop. You bleed 1030.
I do. I literally, it's the only job I have ever had. Um, I remember being a young kid, emptying the garbage, pushing the shop, pushing brooms. And, all I wanted was my dad to give me the opportunity to pull a tire off or use some kind of a tool as a little kid.
Oh,
Um, and I worked there all my teenage years up through, where I was a full time technician out in the shop for years and years. And then obviously transitioned into the front office, as things went on and we grew. But yeah, it's funny. We've been in business 50 years, and I was 3 years old when the shop was opened. So I guess I've been
dude.
employed more or less. I probably should just retire, you would think by now. I mean, I've put my 50 years in.
Yeah, after 50 years, you should get a gold watch or something or a plaque on the wall.
Yeah.
So that progress that you've made through the shop, that's what I want to talk about here for a second, because there's a lot of shops that I go to all over here in North America where it's family, it's all family, and the son is out in the shop. They work up through uh, in the shop. They have the scars. They've done the work. Then they come up into the front office. They learn the business of it. At what point with your pops did you take that active role that he became semi-retired? Can I say that?
Yeah.
What did that look like for you and your pops?
Well, it was a long time coming. I mean, it was a slow transition and a lot of discussions. He'd been doing this full time for many years and he was getting burned out on it.
Mm,
So I've been honestly up in the office for the last 20 years. Um, and when I say in the office, I was a number of years still fixing cars, assigning the work, and kind of running everything day to day. Um, obviously with dad's support, and then my brother was there too, and my sister. Um, but it was it was an interesting process to end up where we are today. And I look at that, because I've got kids that are in the shop. I've had all my daughters have worked for me during college. My youngest son is 19. He's out a GS in the shop right now. And if he chooses to pursue this long term, um, hopefully I can make it a little easier on him than maybe I had it in that transition going forward. I had to learn a lot, and I know that my dad stuck me in places where I needed to learn. Um, but there was a lot of uncertainty, of how this was all going to play out in the end, and it's taken us a long time to get to this point.
Oh, for sure. And there's a lot of Rockefeller family dynamic there where he's putting you where you need to learn. Like everybody in the Rockefeller starts in the mailroom and then they work their way up into the business.
Yeah,
It sounds like Pops did the same for you. And the beauty of what you just said that I'm hearing is you experienced it. So hopefully when you do this transition with your son or your succession plan, because you went through it, you're going to make that work better for whoever's going to take over when you're ready to transition as well.
yeah. I think the big thing is I just want whatever the next step is or the next generation is, whether it's family or somebody else,
Yeah.
more of a clear cut plan of how it needs to be laid out. And
Yeah.
and we had dad would talk oftentimes, when he was having a really bad day, he would be prepared to turn it all over to me and walk away.
Yeah.
And then I'd be
Give me
like,
$10 and here's the keys. I'm
yeah,
done.
exactly. And then the next day nothing would change. And so, and as things went on and on, I mean, the hard part for dad was that this is his baby. This
Yeah.
is all he's done. He's had so much, blood, sweat, and tears into it. It was hard for him to realize that he didn't need to be here on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got that same dynamic that it has been all you've done. It is your baby.
Yeah,
But I think you've got a different perspective in that it's not everything, but
yeah,
it's a lot.
it is.
And you've got family working there now. I met your sister. Your sister's there working with you.
Yeah.
How
So,
how do you work with your sister and not kill her? How does she work with you and not kill you?
well,
How is
that's
it that you're still on this side of the bars?
let's put it this way: when we go on family vacations, we go our separate ways. Yeah, my sister, she runs all the accounting side, the bookkeeping side, the back office. She's awesome, and I mean, she can honestly step in and service right. She can help people at the counter. She can order parts. I mean, she can literally do anything.
Yeah,
But her main focus at this point is keeping track of the numbers
books.
and making sure everything's taken care of. Um, my brother is also a service writer, and he's been there a long time also. Um,
Who's
and
your
it's been
Who's your
what's
brother?
Byron.
Byron. Yes,
Yes,
yes, I met Byron. Okay.
yes, he was there.
Yes.
And so it's been a hard transition because there's times when you have to interact as family, and then there's times where you have to interact as employees, and
Boss.
it's really hard to separate that. And I think that's probably it hasn't been easy, and we've had our battles, but somehow we've fought through and found some kind of a balance. Whether it's a healthy balance, I don't know, but we've all tried to put the best interest of the shop
Yeah.
ahead of our own, because the shop not only supports us, we've got all my employees, their families. There's so much more to it that you have to put the welfare of the shop kind of ahead of personal feelings and things like that, and that is so hard to do.
Oh, it is. It is. I tip my hat to you, brother. That's an awesome dynamic that you're able to work in that. I had an opportunity way back in the way back days to work with my dad in construction. And I just thought, you know what? I really need to keep this father-son relationship, not the boss-employee relationship.
Yeah.
So I chose to step away, and I know it kind of broke my dad's heart that I did that, but it's one of the things you have to really weigh out, and the fact that you're able to do it with your daughters
Yeah.
and with your son, bro, congratulations. That's super
And I
cool.
think every personality type is going to play into that. I've got a daughter that worked for me all through college, and then she refers to it as her adult job. And that she got after college, they work for me when they need flexible schedule and things like that. And it's funny, I and she is just, my wife refers her to the female version of me.
Oh
I mean, she's a
gosh.
go-getter and on top of things. I mean,
Yeah.
in the beginning, I'm like, man, she could run this place easily. And one day we were talking about, what she was going to do now that she'd graduated and leaving me. And she says, Dad, for our relationship, it's best if I go work somewhere else because we're too much alike. So,
Well,
and
bless her heart for
I'm glad.
recognizing that.
Yeah. And I've never forced my kids into the business. They've all had an opportunity there, but at the end of the day, it's their decision to stay or go. And I'm not going to hold it. It doesn't matter to me. I just want them to be happy.
Oh, that's super cool, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is that you have that relationship with them and yet they have that understanding, that dynamic.
Yeah.
That's super cool. So that's where the business is today. What about the future? Where are you going to gobble up some more land? Are you going to move? I don't think you could move, dude. I don't know where you'd go.
No, I think with our customer base, where we're at is where we need to be. Um, and honestly, if I was to look at starting over again with the cost of property and where our customer base is, it would be really hard to go start somewhere else. Um,
Oh, yeah.
and I I actually enjoy, I found a, a new joy in the business in the last few years. Um, for a lot of times it was kind of a job that I was just, it was paying the bills and this and that. And honestly, I was kind of
It
burned
was a
out on
grind.
the
It's a
service
grind.
advising. Um, and after getting my dad to step away, here a few years ago,
Wait,
and
wait, 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 wait. A few years ago?
yeah,
Wait, 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 wait. How many years ago?
so I purchased the shop. I don't know what it's been going on 3 or 4 years now, outright from dad. Um,
He really held on for a very, very long time.
he did. He he. It was hard for him to step away.
Yeah,
Um, but the shop was also expanding and kind of turned into this thing that he realized he couldn't control. And I was doing my best to kind of control the growth and what we needed,
yeah,
but he still kind of had the mentality of, I don't know, he had struggled so long in the shop
yeah.
that, when it come time to talk about expansion and spending some money on equipment and this and that, you know, he didn't see the long-term picture of it.
Right, right.
So, and finally it come down to some long conversations of, Dad, if you were to pass away and when you're gone, it and you don't have this drawn out of what you want to happen to the shop, it may destroy the shop because everybody's going to have their idea of what maybe dad thought or what dad wanted, but once he's gone, who's going to be there to say one thing or another? And so I said, whether you do what you do with it, but make it happen now.
Yeah,
Don't wait till it's forced and you have no say because you're not here.
right. Don't wait
So
until it's in probate
yeah,
and then nobody has a voice. Now the court is telling you what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's not cool. So yeah, kudos to you for talking to your dad like
And
that.
that,
That's
that was a
cool.
hard conversation to be like, you know, we've got to make a decision, good or bad, and get the ball rolling now. And I mean, when these talks went on, honestly, for years and years, and he's obviously getting older, and I hope he's around for a long time. But
Yeah.
you start to see, man, we've got to get this taken care of, because I mean, not only for the livelihood of my family, my brother's family, and our family, my
Yeah.
employees. I've got, um, I think you maybe met, he's my parts manager at the shop, my son Brady, that had been in a severe car accident.
Yeah. Yeah. Big
Um,
dude, tall,
Great
long
big,
hair.
yes, yes.
Yeah. And
You
he's
know,
he's a funny kid.
he is, yeah. Um, his accident was about 8 years ago, and that kind of spurred this whole conversation of like, I've got to be able to provide an opportunity for him. He's an adult, but has some disabilities, and I have this awesome opportunity that I can give him a career,
Yeah.
something to go to,
Yeah. A
and
purpose.
he has a purpose. And
Yeah.
so, and I just thought to myself, if something happens to the shop, not only all my employees and my family and that, but that kind of spurred the new me on,
Yeah.
let's make this thing as successful as we can,
Yeah.
and the longevity. And so I've really worked hard, the last 5 years, getting it to a point like that.
Well, and wait a second. So let's back up here because I'm hearing the conversation started 8 years ago. Son was in the accident 5 years. So was this conversation with Pops? Is this a 5 year conversation that's saying, "Hey, Dad,
It's been going on for 10
tw
years. I mean, a long time, but
even
really
more"?
after his accident, he was in he was in the hospital for more or less of a year.
Oh
And
my,
our family went through a lot after that, and
oh
it kind of
my.
makes you reevaluate what maybe your long-term goals are, or where you need to be looking, and not to say that that's the whole reason, but that was a big part of me making a change of like, okay,
Yeah,
I've either got to make this work and work whether I'm here or not, or it needs to go away and we got to figure out something else.
yeah. Or we got to find the next thing. What's the next
Yeah,
thing? Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, brother, I congratulations, and what a blessing that your boy Brady is still around and still with us, and
Yeah,
that you've got an opportunity for him there at the shop. That's super cool.
yeah, yeah. And there's been a lot of great things that have come from it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's one of those life-changing events that you wish you never have to go through, but then there's been so much good that's come from it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I know of a few on this webinar right now that are observing that are in that same situation where Pops is still holding on to the business, but needs to make the plan
Mm-hmm.
and put that next succession into play. Is there any advice that you would give somebody today that's in that situation? How do they exclamation point this conversation to say, "Hey, Pops, we really need to make this plan"?
I It was hard because there was a lot of discussions between me and Dad, and
Yeah,
there was times where he would say, well, you just write up whatever you think and I'll agree to it. And I never proposed anything like that to him. I said, no, Dad, this needs to be something that comes from you. And so it seemed like that drug on forever and ever because, there's obviously a lot more family involved, and and I felt for what he was trying to do, but I had to give him the space to do it. But I had to get to the point where it was like, we need to do, we had to have a hard discussion of like, it got to the point where I'm like, hey, we're going to make this happen and we're going to do it this year. We've got to the end of the year to make this happen. And honestly, it took better part of a year with a deadline, and signed the papers. And January 1st, I took over the company, you know.
Oh, wow.
But I don't think if we would have had that deadline of like him agreeing to it, and it kind of forced him to make some decisions. Um, I don't know. It's a hard thing because every situation is going to be different. Um, at this point, I'd invested so much time and effort and that into the company. There was days when I just wanted to walk away and be like, "This is stupid. I can go do something else."
Yeah.
But it's also my baby. You know, the growth we've experienced and everything I've been through, the lean times and the good times and all the cycles.
Yeah. 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 In fact, to that point, I remember when you hooked up with the Institute and the conversations that you and I had initially. You're like, hey, look, I'm not looking at car count. I'm not looking at marketing. I've got a good car count. I've got good this and good that. I really am looking to fine tune what we're doing.
Yes.
So when I don't remember, I think it was a 7 or an 8% net that you had operated over the last 3 years, but you knew that there was a little bit more. There's just something else that you wanted to do, and the fine tuning is what you were looking for.
Yeah. In the beginning, I've over the years we've used a couple different coaching companies. Um, they've all been good. We've got something from every one of them.
Right.
Um, Part of the problem is dad would insert me into these coaching companies, but he still had control of everything. So I'd come back and be like, hey, we should do this, or we should do this. And he, well, I don't know. I don't know. Um,
Drug his
but
feet, drug his feet, drug his feet.
yeah. And so after, the company became mine, I started to look at the financials, um, from an owner's point of view, and we had money to pay the bills every month. There was times obviously when we would stagger what bills go out to what vendors throughout the month so that it would clear the bank, but there was always cash flow coming in. And I'm like, we're working too hard to have to operate like this. We're doing something that's not right. um, so I honestly was looking, and I can't even remember how I come across the Institute, but I remember thinking, oh, they're in Ogden, Utah. This will be great. Training, it's in state, versus. And so I went on and I signed up to the program where you could watch all their videos online.
Right.
Cecil's videos on, you know, the numbers, and I honestly think I've watched every one of them multiple times before I even contacted the Institute about coaching. Um, After watching the videos, I started to tweak a few things, on the parts matrix and this and that. And I'm just like, man, I'm tweaking these things and my numbers are starting to move in the right direction. And I'm like, man, what if we could get to this 20% that they talk about? And I'm looking at our sales and figuring 20%. And I'm like, holy crap, why can't we do that? And so then, obviously I contacted the Institute and said, you know, I need some coaching. The biggest difference was when I contacted the Institute was I think I was ready for the coaching. I'd already committed that I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do what they tell me, whether I think it's right or wrong, but I'm going to give it 6 months. And if I follow what they say, was what I thought in my mind, and the numbers start to grow, I'm going to swallow what my pride is or what I think I know and just trust the process. Um, so I signed up. I ended up with Aaron as my coach. Um, those first couple months, I think if he could have reached through the computer and strangled me, he would have.
Okay.
Um, because he would say these things and I would agree, and I'd be like, "Well, I don't know. I just don't know." And so it took a long, when I say a long time, over the first few months of tweaking this and tweaking that, and kind of like letting me get out of the way of the process and letting people do what I'm paying them to do.
Yeah.
Um, the numbers started to move in the appropriate direction,
Nice.
you know.
So, Tracy, how long has it been? When did you sign up? Do you
I
remember?
think it was June
June of last year?
last year.
So just over a year.
Yes, just over a year.
And shout out to your coach, Aaron, for not
Yep.
killing you.
Yeah.
And then, so you were with Aaron for quite a while, and then you got into the group environment. How long were you with Aaron in that one-on-one coaching environment versus going into the group environment?
So my first group meeting was last November.
Okay.
I got invited as a guest, and we went to Denver. Um, and so I ended up going to Denver, and we'd got to the point where he's like, I think you could really benefit from the group process. Um, I went to Denver, and you sit for, a couple days and evaluate somebody's shop, and you go over each other's numbers. And I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys have got it figured out, you know? And the accountability that was being held as the group was honestly, I come back, and I'm telling my sister, I'm like, oh, we're gonna have to do this and change this and this. And she probably wanted to kill me. And I think,
Probably.
yeah, because I'm like, we're revamping the entire accounting procedure and gonna do that this way and this way. And but you know what? Afterwards, and we've got everything dialed into where we truly understand the numbers and what it takes to be profitable, the business isn't that hard
Yeah.
once you get it to that point.
Yeah.
There's still struggles, and there's, things you're always working on. But, in the beginning, it was like, we've got so many broken pieces in the business. Where do you even start? I mean, so we fixed some labor matrix. We fixed a parts matrix. We fixed, and I would hyper focus on one aspect until I got it moving in the right direction. And then I would go over here. Um, and so after entering the group process, I've been to two meetings now. There we were in New York a couple months ago,
With
and
Tom, you went
with
up to
Tom.
Tom's
Yeah,
place.
Tom's actually my composite. He's my partner. So,
Oh,
and he's awesome
nice.
too.
Your
Yeah.
accountability partner.
Yep. Yeah. So you end up with a partner that you look at each other's numbers and goals that you have written out, and you kind of have a meeting a couple times a month. And their job is to hold you accountable, and your job is to hold them accountable.
So I'm going to say some words here, and you can correct me. And the words are, has Tom been able to hold you accountable and call you out on your crap?
Oh, absolutely.
Have you been able to hold Tom accountable and call him out on his crap?
you know Tom's been in it a little longer than I have, so I think it's been more of a one-way street towards me. But I do feel like the last couple of meetings we've had where I could look at his business now that and say, yeah, where do we need to work on? What are you working
Oh, I
on?
love it.
The first couple of meetings, I'm like, man, it was like another coaching session with Aaron, but with Tom, I'd be like, how do you do this? And all he kept saying, he says, it's funny. A year ago, I was in your shoes, um, where I just felt overwhelmed on everything. And
Yeah.
Tom keeps saying, you will get there. You will get there. And you know what? Every meeting we have, I feel like I'm getting a little closer.
Nice, nice. That's awesome. So you highly recommend the group?
Absolutely.
You highly
You know,
recommend that accountability partner?
yeah, I didn't know what I was getting into because when I was researching the institute, I'm like, man, this group process sounds awesome. But in the beginning, I wasn't ready for it. My
Wow.
numbers weren't where they should have been. If I would have got thrown in there from day one, I would have fizzled out because it's too much.
Yeah.
Aaron, we spend a lot of times working on the business to get it to the point to where you can enter the group process and kind of everybody's on different levels, but you're all kind of on the same level of wanting the same success.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the irony here is because I'm remembering the conversations you and I had. You're like, hey man, I got this. I just want to tweak a couple of things. I just want to get in. I want to tweak a couple things. I don't need to overhaul. It's not car count. I don't need to charge shop supplies. I'm already doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And here now you get into the group environment and it just takes off to a whole nother level. So let's talk about the whole nother level. Judging by the numbers, let's talk. Can we talk net profit? Can
Absolutely.
you share that? Because you were at a 7-8%.
Yeah. When we took over, I mean, obviously our first year of me kind of running the business, I think we were at 6%, 5 or 6%.
Okay. Okay.
And, it didn't take long to look at those numbers and be like, well, that's why, there's no money in the bank. I mean, the money that's coming in is just going out, and and since being in the group process and joining with the Institute, um, I think last month I was at 21% net profit. So
Congratulations.
yeah, and there's still more to work on. I know that,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it it it's pretty awesome. Um, and the difference from a business owner of back when Dad was there, of like, we'll send this bill out today and this one out next week. My sister just sends them. I pays them. I don't. It just goes there.
It's due, pay it. It's due,
Just
pay it.
pay.
It just pay
Yeah,
it now.
yeah. I mean, right before this meeting, I was talking with. We're going to buy a new alignment machine, and I just said, yeah, let's just get it. And I just remember the Hunter guy talking to him. He says, well, you want a lease? You want to buy? And I'm like, I don't know. We'll probably just write you a check for it. And I remember after I walked away from that, I'm like, man, that feels good to say that, because 5 years ago I would have been like, well, we need it, but how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that?
Yep. How are we going to finance it?
Yeah.
We there were companies I used to work with way back in the day, and she called it, what did she call it? Creative financing,
Yeah.
where I'm going to write this check, I'm going to float it to you. I know it's going to take a week to get to you in the mail. So hopefully in a week, I have had this client pay me and that client pay me so that I can clear that check when it goes through the bank.
Yeah.
Creative financing.
Yeah. And really getting the business where it's profitable. We're
Yeah.
charging what we need to.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I've been able to increase the salaries of my front office. I've been able to increase the salaries of my technicians. Um, do I think as an industry where we are at where we need to be to pay technicians? No, I think we're behind.
Yeah.
But I, I feel like we're on the right path of, if we charge appropriately, do a good job for the customer, you know, everybody can benefit from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations. I'm sure that the air breathes different. The sky is bluer, the grass is greener.
Yeah.
When you're not in survival mode, everything changes.
Yeah. And you get to a point of like the money side of the business is something I don't even worry about anymore. I mean, you
Wow.
always worry about it,
Yeah.
but when you have your sales tax come out, when your payroll comes out, it just goes out. You don't stress about, did that job get done and flow, into the bank. It just, you know, it we can focus on other things than just cash flow, because it seemed
Yeah.
like for years and years that's what the focus was. We
Right.
Cash flow.
Right. Right. For sure. For sure. And if I remember right, you've got some advisors in the advisor program with the Institute and a manager in the manager program, or
I Just
what
the
other program?
advisors right now. I have um, one of my technicians had to transition due to health reasons out of the shop. He's worked for me for over 20 years,
Oh, wow.
and basically, due to back issues,
Sure.
the doctor said you need to go find something else to do. Um,
That's tough.
so we transitioned him up into the office service writing, and I stuck him in the advisor group. Um, it's been a big learning curve for him, which has been great because we've been able to work with him, transition him on how we do things. But then he also meets with his coach that gives him, I think, another perspective on how the business works from that position.
I love it.
You know, and some of those things are things that we've done for so long. We automatically think that everybody should know, but it's like, yeah, you learn those over a number of years.
Yeah.
Where he's starting from day one, and he's
Day
he's
one.
doing awesome.
Well, and he's got 20 years of experience as a technician turning a wrench in the bays. Now we're just teaching him a whole new skill set, which
Yeah,
takes time, but he'll get it. He'll
yeah.
get it and he'll do it really well. And, you know, Tracy, we've got a service advisor intensive coming up October 8th through the 12th.
Hmm.
You may want to send your
Okay.
advisor there to that 5-day intensive, because it's more than just show up, divulge information. We want to know what their starting point is. Then during the training, we give them tests to see how well they're learning the information. And if they pass, they get a certification at the end. And then we follow up a month after and 3 months after to see how much of the information is sticking and how to see what their progress is, to see where they're going in that next level of retention of the information. How much did they implement?
Yeah, I think it sounds like a great program. Like anything else I've learned through the institute,
Yeah,
you can talk about things, but you put things down on paper, or in our group process we call it an actionizer,
yeah,
which are business goals, personal goals, short term, long term. And that's one thing that you just don't talk about it.
yeah,
There's always a follow up on whatever was being taught or whatever, to make sure you're doing what you're doing. um it sucks sometimes because there's times where you just don't get it done, like a
yeah.
kid in his homework. It's like, well, it's due tomorrow and I haven't done anything. But the accountability is what I think makes all the processes work in it.
Cool, cool. That's some great feedback. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. That's very cool. Well, if any of you have questions, comments, concerns, questions for Tracy, put them into the Q&A, and we'll definitely address those, because you know, there's a lot of people in this industry. There's a lot of different dynamics, and I know that there's some people right now that are in that succession plan cycle
Hmm.
where they need to set the date, have the hard conversations to take those next steps.
Yeah.
Because, Pops, what is it you want to have happen? And
And I
that's,
think that was a big turning point, where as I just focused on dad, and I'm like, what do you want?
yeah,
I take away what you think I want, what mom wants, what everybody, what do you want to see happen to your business?
yeah,
You know, um, and part of that needs to be, where do you see it in
yeah,
20 years from now?
yeah, yeah. I
Um,
love that you have that perspective. I love that you have that relationship with your dad, that you can have those hard conversations, because Yeah. Take everything away, Pops. If it's just the business and you, what's the next phase? What's the next step? What
Yeah,
do you want to have happen?
yeah, and that it was a long time to get to that point, but once we got to that point and we'd set a date, I kind of knew at that point I needed to just focus on that and not let it go.
Yeah.
We've agreed to this. Whatever the terms were, we agreed that it was going to transition this year or whatever it was, and kind of had to work backwards from that point. And, the terms of our decision and our, it changed 20 times during that, you know,
Easily, right? Every
yeah,
conversation, it changes.
yeah, you would come up with an idea. How about this? And it sounds so good. And I'd wake up at 3 in the morning and go, that ain't going to work.
That's a terrible idea.
Yeah. And so you have to give it enough time to kind of digest all that and try and look at it from every point of view. And
Yeah.
there's not a perfect scenario, but you have
No.
to pick the best one.
Right. Right. Well, we got a question coming in here from Gary. Gary's question is, what is the one thing and or biggest, his word is biggest. What is the biggest thing you changed in your business to go from 5% to 21%?
I think, and every business is different.
Yeah.
We're blessed with, we're exceptionally busy. So I wasn't looking for cars um, to fix. Um,
Yeah.
it, I, we're weeks out on the schedule right now. Um, the biggest, honestly, the biggest change that I implemented was fixing my parts matrix. Um, and that took a couple months of tweaking this to that and watching the numbers and making sure they were moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
The other thing was I implemented a labor matrix, where obviously, your door rates, our door rate's 165, but the more higher the hours, it's going to creep the door. And that, I mean, those two things were probably the biggest changes we made that I saw a significant jump. Um, you know, People always say, well, if you're that busy, you've got to just keep raising your labor rate. Honestly, we're at the for our area, we are at the top of where we're at.
Yeah.
Do we need to raise it again? Absolutely. I,
Yeah.
and that's got to be a conversation you have quarterly. Do we need to bump it $5 or whatever it may be? Um, we went a long time. There was one point where I looked back and we had changed our labor rate for a number of years and we were 125. I jumped at $25 one.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, and this was right after dad. And I'm like, if my dad saw me do that, he would kill me.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you know what? I bumped my labor rate in one day, $25, and never heard a word about it.
Oh, isn't
Business
that
went on
amazing?
and nothing changed.
Well, and if we roll back, because I remember having conversations with my shop here in St. George, Utah, there were a lot of conversations about getting over $100 per hour.
Yeah.
And I have to go back a couple of years to do this conversation. There was a mental block.
Yeah.
There was a mental block. They just couldn't do it. I'm sure you and your pops had the same conversations.
Yeah.
We just no, we just can't charge more than $100. But yeah,
Well,
it
and now we're approaching the $200 an hour rate, and
yeah.
we're going to be above that shortly, and we need to be as an industry
Oh,
for sure.
absolutely. Absolutely. I know
And
shops in Florida that are over $300 an hour.
yeah, and a lot of depends on where you're at and what you're, you
It
know,
depends on your business model, depends on
yeah,
what you're working on, depends on what your market can sustain.
yes,
Totally agree 100% on everything.
are your expenses, but the great thing is like working with the institute, all that stuff's laid out to where what my expenses are,
Yeah.
and you can look and be like, oh, we're off a few percent here or there, and you can deep dive into those and see why it's off or what
Yeah.
you need to. what you
You know,
need to do.
Tracy, that's a really good point that you're making right here, and I want to put an exclamation on this. Let's just use a number at 165. For some shops, that is inappropriately high as a labor rate.
Yeah,
For some shops, it's inappropriately low as a labor rate.
absolutely.
What's your business? What's your business? And that's where the coaching and training has come in and really helped you to take it up to that next level.
Yeah, I mean that number of 165 or 195
Whatever
is
it is.
honestly irrelevant as
Yeah.
long as your percentages will support it.
Yeah.
You know, if your percentages won't support it, it probably needs to go up, you know,
Oh, yeah.
or your expenses need to come down, one or the
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
But, it's Cecil's talked about this, and, it's a financial balance in your business,
Totally
you
is.
know, um,
Totally is.
and it depends on, honestly, and that's where you can say, obviously what we pay here is going to be different than California or whatever.
Or different
But
than Florida, for sure.
absolutely.
Right? Oh, yeah. It's totally different. Okay. So, one last question here. This is coming in from Andrew. And his question is: did you and your father have issues when you wanted to make changes to the business, such as increasing the labor rate?
Yes. Um, my dad, for years, there's a handful of shops that, in your area, and we talk about the labor rate. And he said, well, I'm going to call so and so and so and so and see what they're going to charge.
Yeah.
And I just now looking back on it, and I'm like, okay, maybe that gives you an idea of what's around you, but you have no idea what their expenses are, what their, so you have to look at it. I mean, obviously you have to look at the market and what it'll support, but you have to look at it from your business and what you need to support your business. Um, that was probably after my dad stepped away, that was probably one of the biggest things that, when we would have the labor rate discussion of what, because there was times where he'd say, we need to raise it. I'd be like, oh, I don't know. And then there's times I'm like, we need to raise it. And, and we would seem like we were never on the same page at the same time.
Yeah. And the element that both of you were missing was evaluating the business as a whole to see what does the business need, not just your gut feel of we need to raise it.
Yeah. I mean, you can go look at your expenses. You can look at, you know, all your costs, and you could work that number backwards and be like, okay, we're doing X amount of cars per day and, so many hours and whatever. You could work that back and say, well, I've obviously got to charge this number, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But the problem is we don't look at it from that point.
Yeah.
We just look at it as, well, so and so down the street's charging this or that. You've got to look at it from what you've got from your business and what it'll support. And you know what? And if all of a sudden it needs to be raised, or maybe expenses need to be addressed, or there's things in there, there's multiple sides to it. But until you really understand the business from the number standpoint, which I kind of understood them, but in the last couple years, I mean,
Now
it's
you really understand
I
them.
really understand. And I've made this comment. It's like, man, if I would have deep dove into this years ago, where would we be today? But
Yeah.
you know what? Years ago, I wasn't ready for that.
Right.
You
But you
know,
are today. You took the steps. Andrew gives you a big time shout out saying it's very stressful to work with family. Agreed.
yeah, it,
And
it is. I mean, I love my family to death. But like I say, we often will go on vacations our separate ways. And you know what?
mhm.
We're okay with that.
Sure,
So
sure. You're with each other all the time, all day, every day. So to go on vacation, you need a vacation from work,
yeah.
and they
And
are
and the hard part is as family knows, when you get together, the discussion is work. And that's been a hard transition for me and dad.
Yeah.
I call him a couple times a week. He lives down in St. George by you.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. And he, you know, first thing is how's work going? And I'll give him a little rundown, but we've had to find other things to talk about,
good.
and
Good.
that's been because for 30 years, that's what our discussions were
Yeah. Yeah.
of the business.
Well, I'm glad you're able to make that transition, brother. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody is interested, we'd love to work with you. We at the Institute. And Tracy, my shout out is to you, brother. Congratulations on all that you have accomplished with your dad, with the shop, with your siblings, with your nieces and nephews, and your children. Your shop is awesome. It's amazing. And yeah, the future is bright. What are you going to do next? What's the
You,
future? Where are you going to go now?
you know, it's funny is I after being in the group process, if you had asked me a year or two ago, do I ever think about a second location? And I said, you would have to be absolutely nuts.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
now
yeah,
that's kind of turning in the back of my head. You know, who knows what, I don't know. Maybe it's a second location somewhere. Maybe it's a major expansion of what we've got. Um,
yeah,
it's I don't know. The future's bright, and I look forward to whatever it is, and that's kind of my new challenge in life is
yeah,
you know
yeah.
what's next.
What's next? Well, we know that you're definitely going to be getting a new building with a new waiting room
Yep.
soon-ish, because you got to get out of that hallway.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's awesome. Andrew gives you a big shout out and says congrats on everything. Uh,
Appreciate that.
he hopes to meet you at the summit in February.
Yep. I'll be there.
Okay, very cool. Well, let's get there. Let's get there together. Let's lock arms as an industry, and together we can elevate all ships. Together we will do this because we can. Tracy, any last words of wisdom?
If the one thing I can say is if you're watching this and you see the struggles, don't be afraid to ask for help. You
Yeah,
know, that's once you overcome that, things become easier because there's a whole industry out there that wants to help, whether it's coaching other shop owners. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
love it. Love it. Yeah, don't be afraid. Don't be too prideful or so prideful that you're not willing to ask. Yeah,
Yeah,
be willing to ask.
absolutely.
Well, you're awesome, brother. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody that was here today. My friends, it's good to see you. Hope all is well with you and your shop. Look forward to seeing you at the next conference, trade show. See you at the summit. See you at the Service Advisor Intensive in Ogden. But whenever it is, I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.